The gospel is always new. It's a living word. And as a living word, it adapts and changes. It brings to light new things. People don't like the word change, but in fact, we come to understand the gospel in new ways. So maybe the gospel doesn't change, but we do. But the gospel is always new. Number 2, cultures are in constant flux. The meaning of the gospel has a different meaning in different cultures. And we're going to see that over the history of the church, evangelical, evangelization, these terms have been understood in very different ways. As cultures adapt and change, how we understand what the good news is, how we understand how to be evangelical changes as well. And you can think about cultural changes just over the last 50 years in our country. There have been enormous changes in terms of race, in terms of gender, and the changes seem to continue to pile up. The third reason that you can't come to some sort of fixed evangelization is that events shape what's appropriate in terms of witnessing to the gospel. And events dictate what can or cannot be said, and you can see this even in everyday life. For example, I went to a mass, which was supposed to be a celebratory event. It was actually for ordinations. And when the bishop stood up to preach, he looked out over this crowd of several hundred people and said, first words out of his mouth were, "I think that there are only as many people with goodwill as I could count on one hand in this diocese." So you can see how that would be an inappropriate context to make such a comment. Well, if you're in a context post-Katrina, say in New Orleans, how you present the gospel is going to be different if you're presenting the gospel in some place that's unaffected by disaster. If you're in an environment where people are struggling financially, or if you're in an environment where people are doing well financially, that will also affect how one presents the gospel. So as events take place, how one witnesses should appropriately adjust. The people in the audience, the fourth reason the gospel cannot be presented in a formulaic manner, is that the people in the audience are in different places. So if you're speaking to more than one person, if we're going to embark on this new evangelization that we've been asked to undertake, then you're going to be speaking to people who are at different places in their spiritual journey, people who are in different places in terms of social position, people who are healthy, people who are sick, people who know a great deal about the Scriptures, people who know very little. So because of the differences in the people in your audiences, you will find that evangelization has to constantly be adjusting. And even, this is the last reason, even if you have an audience of one, how one person understands an issue can be quite different from others. The classic example that people like to point to is the image of father. If you have a good father, you had that experience growing up, then the father image in Scripture doesn't really present any kind of challenge to you. But what if you grew up with a bad father or an abusive father? Then the term father evokes a different response. And so when you're doing evangelization, you have to keep all of these issues in mind. The gospel is always new. Cultures are in flux. Events shape how evangelization can take place. If you're talking to a group, people are in very different places spiritually. And then finally, even if you're talking to one person, unless you really know them, it's hard to know how they'll react to what you're saying. So, given the fact that all of these adjustments have to take place, one of the things that I try to do, using sort of Lonerganian approach, Lonergan's approach, is to bring together the horizons, two horizons. Lonergan's famous for bringing together horizons. That's the way he likes to speak. In this case, I'm taking my experience in modern communications. I used to be a scriptwriter and a film producer, with that of patristic and medieval evangelization and preaching. So how do people communicate in the past? How do people communicate today? I'm trying to bring those two horizons together to find what we can draw out of our tradition that's still applicable. Now,